You might have heard about the government's proposed referendums for later this year, and they're going to look at several different areas on the family and care and gender equality issues. But you can actually have your say, because there is a public consultation about the proposed referendums, and the closing date for submissions is coming up. It's actually tomorrow at 12 noon. And joined us on the line to explain how you can get involved, we've Independent Senator Ronan Mullen. So Ronan, just tell us a little bit about why the government is holding these referendums. What are they looking to change?
Well, as you're aware, there is a clause in the Constitution that protects, if you like, or that values the role of the woman in the home, and that has been controversial over the years, because from a feminist or a certain version of feminism, that somehow it seems to suggest that women should be in the home, and that their role isn't outside. Now, that isn't the meaning of that clause, but it is certainly a clause that was originally in there to defend and protect family life and to support the idea that there was important work going on in the home, and that you could argue that over the years there wasn't enough done to make it possible to support the role of mothers, of non-earning spouses in the home. Now, that has led to a process involving the Citizens' Assembly, and as often happens with the government, they end up suggesting much more radical changes. And what they're proposing is to insert a gender equality and non-discrimination clause into Article 40 of the Constitution, to remove the women in the home reference and replace it with language that's not gender specific, they say, but that provides recognition for care. And then the third bit they're talking about is amending the article that protects family life, so that it's not just the marital family, the family based on marriage, that's being protected. Now, I think there are various problems with this. You have in the current hate speech legislation, the government, as I said, smuggling in a new definition of gender, so they're no longer seem to be comfortable, with the idea that there are two genders, which is reality, but you have various references coming into legislation referring to gender expression and gender identity and all that crazy new world stuff. So I think it would be important, if people are making submissions, to insist that our Constitution should reflect the fact that there are two genders based on male and female, and that we mustn't be confusing that issue. And I think on the question of women in the home, well, I always felt like we really should be emphasising much more in society that while we support everybody who's involved in the valuable and important work of bringing up children, we need more two-parent, 1.5 income families, and that our economy is going to
and that's
depend
the interesting
on that.
thing,
and that's not said anymore.
I would say a lot of families are in the situation where they feel they have no choice but to have both mum and dad out working full time. And in fact, you could argue, of course, there was in Ireland where women had to work in the home, but now obviously the pendulum, I would say, many would argue, has swung in the other direction. And by that I mean where women would love to be at home with their children, and when all of the research on this, the majority of women say they'd love to be caring for their children themselves, either part-time or full-time in the home, and now women are actually forced out to work. So in fact the Constitution isn't living up to what it's promised, because it says women shouldn't be forced out of economic necessity to leave the home. And probably a lot of women listening saying, actually, I feel as a mother working in the home totally devalued, and this might just be another kind of nail in that coffin of saying motherhood isn't valued at all.
That's right. We've built an economy that doesn't value home-based parenting, whether it be the mother or the father in individual situations who gives the care at home. And the science on this is very clear, particularly from America, where they have done tons of research over the years. They talk about the marital advantage, the institution of marriage, the two-parent, the always intact heterosexual marriage isn't just good for children in terms of mental and emotional welfare and all of those indicators. It is also the greatest source of wealth long term. It makes economic sense and it makes social sense. Yet we have, public policy leaders in government and in the NGOs who simply won't talk that kind of language, because they are more increasingly driven by a more woke ideology. So if people are, and by the way, people who want to check out what I'm saying on Twitter at Ronan Mullen will get some of what I'm saying on this. And if they are thinking of making submissions, the email is genderequality@equality.gov.ie, genderequality@equality.gov.ie. But I would encourage people to make their views known to the government by tomorrow at 12 o'clock and say, look, we want two genders. That's what makes sense. Our constitution shouldn't fudge or confuse that issue. And we need to stress the importance of marriage. Now, we know we have redefined marriage, so it's no longer just, heterosexual marriage in the constitution. But let's keep the focus nonetheless on marriage, because the vast majority of marriages are fathers and mothers bringing up children, and we want to encourage that without doing anybody else down. That is what we should be encouraging for the good of our society, economically and socially. And therefore, the role of women in the home, if they are the ones who choose to give the care in the home, should continue to be valued. If it's the parent, man or woman in the home, that's fine too, but we must continue to stress the value of marriage in particular in our society. And I don't think the government should bring forward any referendum that minimises that or relativises the importance of the family based on marriage.
Just finally to ask you, Ronan, that there's people listening that they might be echoing some of your concerns. Maybe they've never made a submission like this before. Is it something that needs to be overly complicated? What's the best way of going about it?
On the contrary, the best and most effective submission is the one that gets to the point, and it could be just 3 or 4 lines, but, you're there, you're saying what you think, and you're saying it in your own words. And as I said, I think the key point in all of this is marriage matters. Caregiving in the home matters. That's fathers and mothers. And that is the model that will work best for our society, that we would respect the binary, the natural reality that we are male and female, and that we should respect the family based on marriage, because that will continue to be of benefit to our society, and we shouldn't just reduce it to being one option among many in the way we talk about this. And our constitution, which is our fundamental statement of values and basic law, should make that point clear.
Thanks so much for joining us on the show today. That was Independent Senator there, Ronan Mullen.